My dear friends, I'm not trying to philosophize. Neither am I a political scientist. I was a practitioner, happily making a lot of money. I was also a public servant, not once but now twice. But now I am a judge, just like you are. A judge, perhaps I'm primus inter pares, but I'm still a judge. And so I ask myself the question that many of you might be asking yourselves. And I'm sure all judges in modern democracies do ask themselves this question. And last afternoon in Kuala Lumpur, we asked ourselves this question. What is my role as a judge? What is my role as a judge? Seems a simple question, doesn't it? Certainly it is my role and the role of every judge to decide a dispute before us. That's pretty obvious. Now, it is my role, as I see it as a member of the Supreme Court, to determine the law by which the dispute before me should be decided. Certainly it is my role to decide cases according to the law of my legal system. But is that all that can be said about my role? Does my role end there, Mr. Minister? Are there criteria for assessing, I say, the quality of my work as a judge? Certainly no such assessment should be based on the aesthetic quality of my writing. Nor should the criterion be the number of sources I cite in my judgments. But then, what would be a meaningful criterion? What is my role and your role, our role? And do I even have a role beyond, I say, beyond merely deciding the dispute before me according to the law? Now, these are the questions that would occupy me, that occupies me daily as I enter a courtroom and take my seat on the bench. And perhaps a necessary and indispensable adjunct to that question is the question of how accountable we are in the context of contemporary challenges, and perhaps even challenges, as your theme says, ahead of us in the times to come. My dear friends, judges have been compared to very interesting things. They have been compared to priests. Writers have said that we are of a monastic order. Pujakatweta patuna hase kila kiyan. Now that's a very important state of mind, that, or perhaps a state to be in, isn't it? Now, justice, therefore, as Ulpian, the famous jurist, said, is a contract, is a constant, unfailing disposition to give everyone his legal dues. To give everyone his legal dues. The principles of law are these. The principles of law are simply these. Live righteously. Is that too much to ask? Live righteously. Injure no man. Give every man his due. After all, Lord Atkin, perhaps in the Donahue principle, the neighbor principle, captured that idea in a different way. To be learned in the law is, writers say, is to be acquainted with the divine. And to those who know about just, what is unjust and what is just. So therefore, my dear friends, the comparison may not be altogether a happy one, perhaps, but there is no denying the fact that when a judge enters judicial office, he enters upon a sacred calling, as I said, and takes upon himself a sacred trusteeship, my dear friends. It's not an accident that you were a judge. After all, why should you 210 be handpicked to be judges when there are 21 million, of which more than 60% are perhaps of your vintage and less of my vintage? It's not a quirk of fate. It's a divine calling, my dear friends. I think that is something that we have to remember and remind ourselves all the time. So on assumption of judicial office, a judge should change his lifestyle. We can't be the boy we were in school. We can't be the girl that we were in school. We can't do the flirting that we were doing in school. We can't be found to be a joker who played hell at the back of the class. We have to grow from those old traits if we really were to take on the mantle of being in a monastic order. We have to keep our eyes, our feet, and our ears to the ground, to listen to the people, to listen to what people have to say about us. Oh, they say all kinds of nice things about us. Some say, oh gosh, he's a lovely judge, nice fellow, he gives us a date every time we ask for it. Others say, my gosh, he's a hopeless fellow. He doesn't get on the bench in time. He doesn't write his judgments. He is absent on most days. He gets on the bench at 11 o'clock and gets off at 2:30. He is holidaying on a weekend. He hardly reads a book. And he hardly writes a judgment. Now that's the other kind. Now, do we really need to hear that or the other story that I told you? We don't have to give in to flattery. I will deal with it once more. We don't have to be taken in by flattery, nor do we have to be taken in by the critique. Every day all kinds of things are said about even me. That doesn't bother me. I don't even read them. In fact, I don't read them. I've never even seen them. People come and tell me, sir, some fellow says some nasty thing about you. I said, that's nice, that somebody says something nasty about me. We just get on with our work because that's a duty, that's a God-given duty. So therefore, my dear friends, therefore we must also be alive to the duties of the day and focus on the value needs, the needs of the community. What is good for Trincomalee perhaps is not necessarily good for Mathura, although the law may be the same. You have to apply the law in keeping with the context of the minister and I were pleased to recently go to the remotest parts of this country and open courthouses. I tell you, my dear friends, that if you read Roman Dutch law or English law in its complexity to those of them, into those people in those villages, it would be virtually pouring water on a duck's back. That is what it would be. So we need to mold the law in its creativity, in its functionality, to meet the needs of the community. Do we go to Bakamoona, for example, a little village? If you've heard of it, Bakamoona is between Hinguragoda and Dambulla. Now just imagine if you go to Dambulla and order 100,000 rupees bail, cash, with 2 government servants. The only government servant might be the judge himself in the whole village. Right? Just imagine. But that's what the law says. Release the man on bail on sufficient sureties to ensure that he gets to court. But the man in Bakamoona perhaps has never set foot out of Bakamoona. Now let's understand that. The man in Bakamoona probably won't have all his buttons And the Murliya will cry out and say, Bottang dagan. Bottang nehe dagan. Now these are the things. You see, when we sit here, we must be sensitive to the needs of the community in which we work. After all, we are blessed. We are in these crispy suits, lovely cars, we have homes to go to, we have a square meal every day. We have nothing to worry. Really, our worries are not too much. Actually, our worries are the problems that we cause ourselves. But the man in Bakamuna probably has a serious problem. He doesn't have too much to eat. He doesn't have a roof over his head. He doesn't have a hospital close by. He has a court breathing down complicated jurisprudence to him which he doesn't understand. Right? Now those are just look at the social imbalance in which we live. Just think about it. And that's where what the minister said, access. Make access easier. Would you read Foot to the man in Bakamuna? Or would you read Denning's exposition on Hedleyburn versus Heller to the man in Bakamuna? No, you won't. You would tell him in simple terms, now those are the things that you probably should be doing. Perhaps go down to the level of mediation. That is the order of the day, my dear friends, I can assure you. I was in India 6 months ago with the Chief Justice of India. And we had a long discussion, almost about 3 hours. And he told me, he said, CJ, our problems, they have what is known as the Judicial Services Authorities Act, which offers court-assisted mediation, Minister, today. And yesterday, Justice Chauhan, the President of the Court of Appeal, told me yesterday that they have virtually wiped out their backlog in some of the provinces by just using simple mechanics of mediation assisted by a court. I'm simply trying to tell you that we have to fashion ourselves and mold ourselves to deliver justice at a level which our people in wherever they are living would understand and effectively implement. So therefore, the judiciary cannot, I say, plagued by institutional decadence, if it were to discharge that sacred duty to utilize the law to rid society of the cult of violence, perhaps that we see, that has jeopardized the very fabric of our community. My dear friends, I would recommend strongly and counsel that you maintain a low profile and avoid excessively conspicuous conduct. It's a bit tough. Our Asian mentalities don't actually give us the genetic makeup, I say, to maintain a low profile. We all need to be frontliners. We all need to be frontliners. That's one of our problems. That no one wants to sit back, just do your work and peacefully go home. You have to hit the headlines. Judge so-and-so sentences a Kasipu Mudalali for 10 months. Who wants to know? Who wants to know? Is that public news? Or someone in, I can occasionally, perhaps in one page, and the newspapers also get taken in by this kind of stuff. In other words, you are actually creating sensation. And that's not what you are there for. We judges are not in this country being appointed as judges to create sensation, to create news. That's not our function. We actually provide a service of a very, very high order, my dear friends. A very high order.